Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about possibly the oddest, weirdest, craziest story on YouTube. That's surely an overstatement, right? Well, we we will see. So we are talking about Ammon. I don't know how to pronounce it. Ammon Hillman. And what is so interesting about this story is that he has a PhD in the classics, but he's got all kinds of weird stuff where he was investigated for demonic possession. He was fired from a college. Sexual assault and just wild scholarly claims. People might have known him from other YouTube channels and people like Daniel McClellan responding to him. But what's really interesting about him specifically is if you Google him, like nothing really comes up. So here we go. So if you just put him in Google, Ammon Wills Hillman, he has his website. You have just like Reddit, people talking about him there. Uh, Danny McClellan responding saying Jesus Christ, a trafficker. Just people responding to him, but like this is all out of nowhere. So who is he? It's just really fascinating. We're gonna go into a deep dive. So one, as I said, he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. He's almost a nobody in that regard. But two, so he has a MS in bacteriology, so he has some type of scientific background. He has a PhD in classics, as we said. That's a University of Wisconsin-Madison. So that's a legit college. So he's got legit like scholarly knowledge in that specific field. He has, let's see, yeah, his specialty is ancient Greek, Roman medicine, pharmacy, mystery cults. So a lot of interesting stuff there, but not something that most people would care too much about. Interestingly, though, he was investigated by the Vatican for demon possession. He was fired from St. Mary's University for controversial research on drugs and ancient religion. So that's what's interesting, though, because there's multiple claims out there, and we're going to talk about that because there's a discussion of like, was he fired for the controversial research? Was he fired for the play? We'll talk about that, where sexual things happened, I guess you could say. He also has a YouTube channel named Lady Babylon. Oh, okay. JS says same school as Michael Heiser and Robert Homestead. So that's fun in itself. Actual like legit biblical scholars. So the specific book that he wrote, it's been very popular recently. The chemical use, drug use, and the roots of Western civilization. So this was his part of his dissertation in college, and his instructors required him to just completely remove huge parts about drug use in his PhD. So as you can see, the picture is a little fun in itself. But not only that, but he supposedly won a Nobel Prize. What? So this was, let's see, yeah, right here. If I can pull it up. All right. So this is just a random website. I don't see it as being like legit website in any way at all. It's just, I don't know, hnbgu.org. So it does have a .org, but like if you look at it, it just seems like some random guy made it up. But specifically, where did I go? Yeah, here we go. It says Hillman has received many awards, including the Nobel Prize in Chemistry and the National Science Foundation's Career Award. So that's really interesting, considering his background doesn't say anything about that. He doesn't say. I don't know if he says that, at least in any of his interviews. Not that I've seen, at least. And not only that, but there's other controversy, like not having much money in college and all that kind of stuff, or where he taught. But so some people of you guys might be familiar because he was on Gnostic Informant and Myth Vision with Derek on like a conversation with Kipp Davis, where Kipp Davis left the conversation, and he's such an interesting personality that I had to show you this. Let me know if you guys can hear or don't hear this. So This is just midway through, but he's just an interesting personality. I'll show it on the screen here, but all his videos, they have him where he's literally in his kitchen doing the interview. He's just standing up in his kitchen. So like there's one clip where he is like pouring his kettle of whatever water tea into his cup just in the middle of the interview. It's amazing. This is like a really good example of this. I don't know. He's just an interesting person.
That rolls off the tongue in such a way.
Look at his
when it's
reaction.
Spoken in Hebrew.
Let me
Look at his
so
reaction
you're saying, so when we read Aesop's fables,
he's in top left here.
The character's name often represents or reflects the stuff they're doing in the story. Like a person named his name was
sound doesn't matter. But look at it. Top left here. Like what is he doing? Okay, maybe he's just biting his fingers. What is he hitting himself? He talking to himself in the interview? So interesting. And he had an interview with Danny Jones, huge channel, okay? And yes, JS, Ammon is a reference to the Egyptian creator god, I believe. But so he has this interview, and he talks about demon possession opening portals as he was as supposedly kicked out of the school for. So let's watch that. Just wild person. Also, his personality is just really interesting. On one hand, it's like this is odd, but on the other hand, it's like he's super interesting to listen to. So in some ways, I'm jealous. It's a really weird dynamic.
What sort of pushback or backlash have you gotten from the mainstream academic institutions for talking about all this stuff?
None.
No.
It's better to ignore. Right? It takes him, a professor from Brown told me it'll take him 10 years to catch up with your research. And they're just
Didn't something
behind,
happen with the
behind.
church? Didn't the church or something come make a statement about you specifically?
I was investigated by the Catholic Church.
You were investigated by the Catholic Church. When?
Something I wanted to say before we get any further than that is even in his YouTube bio, the first thing he says, "I am Dr. Ammon, recently investigated by the Catholic Church for demon possession and portal opening on the grounds of a Catholic university campus while professor of classical languages." That's the first thing he says. He says, "Together we will expose the sacred mystery found in our ancient texts. We will uncover the apocalypse. Face first, awake and unafraid. As always, hail Satan." So in this interview we're about to watch, he seems to say that he's not a Satanist. So I don't understand the whole hail Satan thing. But really fascinating. I don't fully understand what makes this person just crazy to me.
For when I worked for the St. Mary's University.
Really? And how did you find out about this?
I had a Monsignor come to me and say, "Hey, I've been to," he was one of my students, right? Keeping tabs on everything and learning Greek. He got to learn Greek in the process. So I hope he kept it up to this day. He told me, he said, "I've been to 5 meetings about you."
What?
I couldn't help but laugh. You know what I mean? At this time, I had professors coming to me going, "You're going to get fired. You can't get fired. And, oh, by the way, we support what you're doing, but we're not going to put our asses out there."
All right, so what he's referring to is, I could be wrong, but I'm almost 100% sure, considering what else I've read here, is that people are coming to him because they're saying, "Hey, you're going to get fired." And the question is like, what are you going to get fired for? So he did have some controversial views, but in all the news outlets and all that, it seems like he's getting fired for making something having to do with the play. We'll talk about that, something sexual, but there's also like some type of sexual assault allegations, stuff like that. So he's saying, like, people are coming to him saying, "You're going to get fired," which to me implies like, "Hey, stop." But I guess he he didn't want to, and the reason why it seems like what he's referring to is these like this play is because they say we agree with what you're doing, like that the professors, as we'll see, they seem to agree with the way it's portrayed, and other scholars too have said themselves that maybe he got a raw deal in this, but so it seems like people are coming to him saying, hey, you got to stop because this is not a good look, you're going to get fired, but he said nope, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I thought, well, cowards, but whatever. I had to stay true to the sources. So I did. So the Catholic Church, look, a student on campus claimed that she woke up at 4:35 in the morning, and that I was floating. I floated through the door of her dorm and hovered over her roommate and had sex with her roommate as I hovered over her bed. And then she woke up and made a noise, and I extended my hand and paralyzed her. Now, this student was released from school due to the mania. It was a mental discharge.
This was one of your students?
No, she wasn't one of my students. She was one of the students that was working on the play, the Medea, that I was the contracted advisor for.
Okay.
And the student that I allegedly hovered over and made cosmic love to was the lead role as the younger form. We had two forms. We had a younger, the one that killed her brother, and then an older form. Yeah.
And
so they had a hearing. They had an
so
inquiry.
who did she tell this to? Who did she tell the story to?
Administration.
And how did the Catholic Church get
The Catholic
involved?
Church had an inquiry, and the bishop had to come and sit. I'm sure it was hilarious. I had a group of people before the inquiry. I had a group of people come to me and say, I was like, who are these people in my office? And they said, we know who you are, and we know what you're doing, and the demons that you're working with. And I was like, excuse me? Right? Excuse me? And then there was the inquiry, the formal inquiry, and it was I'm told it was two charges. Number one was demon possession, which personally I think that's pretty cool.
That's pretty metal.
No, it is. No. Number two, I was opening portals.
To where?
I don't know. But do you think I would be a Catholic?
Can you find this? Is this published anywhere?
Yeah, it is.
Find
Now,
it. Find it.
I got it though, so people can have a little sympathy for me. I was fired after the production of the Medea. It was wildly successful. People said it was the best thing they ever produced, right? But I had Furies, choruses.
By the way, this was like 9 years ago. The articles we'll look at are from 2015. So this happened a long time ago. And Ammon Hillman is just randomly coming on YouTube on this channel just a month ago. Out of nowhere almost. It's wild.
Of Catholic university students pointing those.
What?
Yes. They said they wanted it accurate. So we brought in the priapus. We brought in what they call the fasciculum. It's a Roman implement. It's a and when you point it at somebody, like a priest who's involved in doing naughty things to children, you are throwing off from the stage that corruption. You're purifying your audience. And it was quite successful. It succeeded to the point that, the Monsignor that I knew, I probably shouldn't put he probably going to put his, no, he's a big guy. He said, look, he brought up the book. I had just published a book that was about ritual in the early church. And apparently that was what was making all the hullabaloo. The story.
When you die, you go to another life.
We got an ad.
Maybe heaven,
That's
maybe
awkward.
purgatory.
Of me flying through the air and all of that just kind of added an atmosphere of, it was like religious frenzy. And the Monsignor just explained it to me that the charismatic wing was quite active in that area, and he didn't like the direction it was going, and I just happened to be one of their targets. So that's why, they did what they did. And, once you've been ejected, you can't go back. There's no way. I'm Ronin now. So what I do is I use the same skills.
You're what now? What was the word you used?
Ronin.
Ronin.
Like, it's a Japanese samurai who's lost his lord. He's got no protection of the institution, nothing like that. Yeah.
What is this? Okay, this is an article.
All right. So, I'm sure Hillman can put more.
Fired over the phallus. Adjunct at St. Mary's University of Minnesota says his contract wasn't renewed and he was fired from a custodial job on campus due to a play prop.
All right.
Now get this.
During the week, this is it? Hillman was contracted by the Catholic University this fall to translate Seneca's version of Medea, a story largely about a woman's revenge on a husband who's abandoned her for a more politically advantageous marriage. But Hillman, technically the production's playwright, also highlighted Medea's undertones about greed and suggested that the cast members deliver admonishing lines about corporate greed while pointing fascina at the audiences. Used in the ancient world in certain rites and to ward off evil, fascina are supposed to embody the divina power of the phallus. In that spirit, the props being prepared for the show looked distinctively like one of the props pictured at the right.
There was one that was 6 feet long that they carried in procession into the performance. Now remember, these are sold out too. All of our performances were totally sold out.
Okay, so he has a job as a custodian. And in the article, they talk about, because the position that he had at the school where he was teaching, he was an advisor. He also did like some chemistry class or something like that. He he didn't make enough money. They weren't paying him enough, so he was the custodian, like literally a janitor. Wild, okay? And all in this wildness. So even though he was a liked professor, like very popular professor there, and it makes sense, like he's some views are wild and people love wild views. At the same time, he's also clearly a public speaker, something to watch, very entertaining, okay? And he's doing his play, he using these objects that a Catholic school probably would prefer not to be on a play, right? If I'm going to a play, I'm not hoping or desiring or would be very, very against anything sexual being on the stage, anything related to anything pornographic or anything like that, even if it is historical. So he almost crossed a boundary in that regard. But apparently a student charged him or said that he did something really terrible sexually, opened portals, what? And then not only that, but he apparently at the same time was writing his book that had some wild views. So of course the Catholic school did not like that. That is understandable. Yes, he was a professor and janitor. Interesting mix there.
Really?
Yeah, and they said it was the best. It was the best thing that the theater department had ever produced. Yeah. So when I was fired after this, people were like, "What? What's going on?" And when I was fired, the American professors, it's like a union. That's what it is. National Association of University Professors sent a couple of people out to inquire about my termination, and they ruled that I was improperly terminated, and this was not, this was just because of what I was teaching. It had nothing to do with anything else. So I thought that was nice that the AAUP would come out and do that. They had the international one do the same thing. There's an article on FIRE, which is the freedom for free speech on campus, and the act of the university, St. Mary's University, firing me got them put on the top 10 list of bad places for free speech.
Really?
Yeah. The USA Today is the one that publishes it.
Can you find that?
Yeah, it's going to be on there. And they made the top 10 list because of what they did to me.
Wow,
Yeah.
No way.
So, and there's quite an article. They had me in a place where I had to even work. And I didn't mind because I don't mind doing dirty jobs, but I used to clean toilets. Because the professor's salary they paid me was not enough to feed my children. Yeah, so you can see why the Monsignor was like, okay.
How did that affect you personally after this all happened?
It shut off my, every time something has happened in my life, it's helped to forge my path ahead. When my head of my department told me the Romans wouldn't do such a thing as take drugs.
He said, why would they do it why would they do that back then when we don't do it today, right? Something to that effect?
I cannot confirm nor deny that Romans did drugs, even though I dress like one.
He said they just wouldn't do such a thing. They just wouldn't do such a thing, right? When she said that, I realized, okay, I've got to go investigate everything there is to know about drug use in the ancient world, right? I've got to find the position. I've got to dig the hole, and I've got to find that reality that lies there beneath the ideas of scholars.
So apparently his views are something along the lines of scholars, of course they think that, so according to him, I'm not an expert in any way at all, but I guess in his book he's arguing that a bunch of Romans did a bunch of drugs back then, and there's a controversy. It's a new view apparently, and lots of people accept it now, as I've been told from random YouTube comments. But there is another really controversial thing that with the whole Daniel McCullen and Kipp Davis, where he argues that the Septuagint, the oldest Greek text we have of the Bible, is essentially the earliest text, or at least he believes that the first language the Bible was written in was in Greek, which is just wild. That's on the level of, I think there is actually more mythicists out there in biblical scholarship than there is of this view that Greek was the first. So it's wild. I don't know anybody who thinks that the Bible was originally written in Greek. So super crazy, okay? But there's all these discussions, and we'll have other people on the channel to talk about that later. But regarding the Nobel Prize, I think there's a good chance that he does not have one or never had one, because all of his videos are literally in his kitchen. I would think that one would be able to afford better space to do videos than in the kitchen. By the way, don't check out his channel if you don't want to listen to things referencing sex, just to let you know. But interesting guy for sure. All right. Is he demon possessed? Isn't that a fun question? Let's look at what people at the university said about him and see what they had to say on the topic. So this is the rest of the article that was being read by the Danny Jones podcast. So it says, much of what happened next is in dispute with Hillman and the director of the play, Judy Myers, a tenured professor of theater and dance on one side, and administrators on the other. Hillman says that he and Myers were called to a meeting with Michael Sharon, Dean of the Arts, to discuss the profane nature of the props while the play was still in production. Both professors said that Sharon, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the right, is it Sharon? Anyways, told them he had sneaked into the staging area for the play and taken pictures of the Facinus, that is the sexual looking object, and then asked them to change them. But Stacia Vogel, a university spokeswoman, said that Sharon never met with Hillman about the Facina and that a faculty member involved in the production, not Sharon, had taken the pictures of the props. Students caught wind of what was happening and created a petition to stop it and held a meeting with Sharon and Jimmy Bickerstaff, the theater department chair, who did not immediately return a request for comment. Sharon allegedly refused to answer questions about the Facina, and the crew eventually replaced them with what Hillman described as props resembling big bananas. So they apparently changed the prop, and then they did the show. Crisis averted, right? In the interim, Donna Aronson, the vice president of academic affairs, allegedly asked Myers to run by her anything she planned to submit to the student paper, the Cardinal, about the play. Myers sent Aronson a draft of an op-ed explaining what the play was about. Other ancient practices included the processional of the actors to the performance space carrying an 8-foot phallus, that's the sexual object, as well as an improvised set of insults hurled at the audience with a fascinum in hand. It said, in part, these insults were a means of holding a mirror up to the audience and confronting viewers with their lavish and corrupt lifestyles. The Pope offers the same opportunity for self-reflection when he encourages us to be concerned about the greed and corruption that starves children all over the planet today. So this is like an actual play, and they're doing weird stuff at the same time. In response, Aronson sent the following email. I do not think that this article is appropriate for the Cardinal. It may be incendiary. And while at the end there is a comment about the challenges regarding age-appropriate attendance, it may stir up more response than when need. In fact, it could alarm the conservative Catholic community. Oh, really? That's crazy. Thank you for running this by me. Please let me see what becomes the final draft. Myers decided not to follow up and didn't publish the piece. The play, Big Bananas and All, opened successfully in November without further interference from the administration. But news of the prop issue had spread, and some faculty members were concerned about its implications for academic freedom on campus. At a faculty meeting, another professor attempted to broach the issue, but faculty leaders allegedly told her to table it because another untenured faculty member was involved in the matter and soon due for a pre-tenure review. Myers said she attempted to file grievance after Aronson gave her an extension on the timeline for filing such complaints, but by the time she tried to file, she said the extension was revoked. Vogel said that the statement was inaccurate, but that she couldn't comment further because information regarding faculty grievances is confidential per our faculty handbook. So it looks like they have a handbook link here. Then 3 weeks ago, Hillman was notified that a student involved in the production had filed sexual harassment claims against him. He said he hasn't been given a formal copy of the investigation, but that from what he could gather, the complaints were vague and related to things he'd said or done in public during rehearsals. For example, he said he suggested that the dancers in the production moved their bodies sensually in the manner of a snake. Now, personally, having sisters who have done dance in the past, this doesn't sound crazy at all, especially in today's day and age for people to move in the manner of a snake. At the same time, Hillman also himself allowed himself to be hit with a horse crop to demonstrate to the actors that it wouldn't hurt when they used it to hit their castmates in the play, because apparently in the play, Medea whips 2 people. A third complaint related to his talk about gynomorphs, bigendered entities mentioned in the play. So maybe he said something weird or, I don't know, against LGBTQ or something like that. I don't know. Hillman said he wanted to bring a lawyer to his part of the investigation, but was told that any accompanying person had to be a pre-approved university employee. And when he tried to bring his department chair, she was denied entry. He said he was never informed of the results of the investigation or given the opportunity to defend himself, but was recently told his contract would not be renewed for next semester. And on Thursday, he was informed that he also was being fired from his custodial position. So they fired him from the janitor position. And this, once again, 9 years ago. Vogel said she couldn't comment on Hillman's custodial position because it was a personnel matter. Regarding the investigation, she said she was also limited in what she could say, but that all sexual harassment claims at St. Mary's are investigated and acted upon in accordance with federal law, and the grievance procedures don't apply to sexual harassment claims. At the same time, sexual harassment claims are not vetted by faculty body. That's contrary to a widely followed policy recommended by the American Association of University Professors, which says that if a grievance officer is unable to informally effect a mutually acceptable resolution, the complaint is to be submitted to a faculty committee. So that's really weird. Vogel says that pursuant to federal law and university policy, Hillman was appraised of the allegations of sexual harassment and interviewed, as were others involved and witnesses. Just because no one else experienced the harassment doesn't mean it didn't happen, but for what it's worth, Myers said she never witnessed anything untoward at rehearsals. So some people say he was an excellent professor. Someone said, never before in the 16 years that I have been at St. Mary's have I seen such interest in Latin and Greek as there has been since he joined the department. She said, noting that Hillman was versatile and also taught a medical terminology course in the biology department. Deal said Hillman will definitely be missed. So there's a talk about academic freedom and all kinds of fun stuff there. But just really, really wild stuff. But anyways, to answer your question there, so JS makes a good point. He says maybe he was a member of a team that won a Nobel Prize. So maybe he was part of the team and he didn't get that much money from it because it was a group effort. guess it's possible. At the same time, it's literally the only source that I've seen here is just some random website that looks like some guy off Craigslist made it. But anyways, so what do you think of this guy? Really fascinating. Is he demon possessed? He sure talks interesting, and he's got I couldn't find a good picture of it, but he's got like tattoos on the side of his head, and he sure seems to gravitate toward that persona. But is he actually demon possessed? No, probably not. But definitely make sure to stay tuned to this channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Turn on bell notifications because we're going to be talking about his claims of the Septuagint, or the Greek text, being written before the Hebrew. What is the evidence for that? And about the debate between Kipp Davis and Ammon Hillman. What made Kipp Davis leave the debate? We're going to talk about that. But otherwise, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.